Hey everybody, it's your good friend Jay Black, and this is Learn to Be a Stand-Up, or How to Be a Stand-Up, or Do You Want to Be a Stand-Up, or whatever. It's comedy and lessons therein. Today's episode is connected to our cruise ship week. Wait, hang on. Shark Week. But I'm talking about cruise ship comedy to talk about Shark Week. Do you see how there's a tenuous connection between the two? Hey, it's all part of a theme and it's under the umbrella. Give me a break. So, cruise ship comedy. A couple of things up front. I've only ever performed for one cruise line. I don't think I should say which cruise line, probably just so that I'm safe and we don't get sued or anything like that. So if you're a comic that has performed on cruise lines and you're watching this and you're saying, Jay, all of your information is incorrect in my experience, please, in the comments below, correct me and tell me your thoughts on it. I'm only talking about my experience from one cruise line, and those comics who have performed on that cruise line will probably know which one I'm talking about. Now, for a long time, I refused to do cruise ships because I thought there's a certain degree of stigma that goes with performing on a cruise ship, where it's sort of like, well, I need to make money in this business. Cruise ships pay very well, but I've given up all hope of being famous or cool or hip. Now, don't get me wrong. I have given up all hope of being famous or cool or hip. I mean, look at me. Look at what I'm doing. Look at my life. I'm done. I'm basically toast. But I started doing cruise ships recently because the old stigma has started to go away. See, in the old days, you would just do like, big theater shows for the whole family. And that's a harder thing to do when you're coming out of clubs, right? Because, you're first off, theater shows are always a different vibe because of how big everything is. There's, rafters, so the laughs don't bounce down. They just go up into infinity, so it doesn't sound right. The intimacy is gone. Like, you're looking at it a sea of black instead of a sea of faces. And, the whole family's there. So when you are performing for 6-year-olds and, literally 233-year-old people. Now, I know you're saying, Jay, you're using literally to mean figuratively, but I'm not sure. Because a lot of the people there, they honestly look like they have vague memories of what it was like before there was an America. So they're very old people there. So when you're doing that breadth of an audience, finding comedy that works for all of them feels like, okay, well, I can't do anything edgy. I can't do anything even personal because my personal experience isn't going to work on a 4-year-old and it's not going to work on a 400-year-old. So what can I do? So you just sort of default to this like middle of the road, I'm going to talk about the buffet comedy, and the stigma attaches to cruise ships. In modern times, and I mean in the last 3 or 4 years, there's been a movement to have actual comedy clubs on the boat. So you're still doing a few, shows to everybody, but you're now actually able to go to a comedy club, and those comedy clubs have ratings. So, there's a G-rated show, a PG-13 show, and an R-rated show. So even though you're performing on a boat, you still get to perform more club-style comedy. So that shift has sort of opened me up to the idea of like, yeah, sure, I should do cruise ships. And they can be a lot of fun, especially when you're doing the club shows. And I would say, and this goes back to things I've said in other episodes, the idea that something is hacky just because it's universal is, I think, a limiting thought on what we do as stand-up comics. It is kind of cool if you have a joke that only pertains to one semi-unknown Super Nintendo game from 1991. Was the Super Nintendo out in 1991, Jim? Does that reference hold water?
It was some Nintendo.
Maybe, I'm going to say TurboGrafx 16.
I did have that.
Yeah, TurboGrafx. Did you have Bonk?
Dreamcast.
Yeah, Dreamcast. Oh, I had Dreamcast. That was the first major purchase I did with my first paycheck. As I went out and I bought Dreamcast, and every once in a
Sound financial decision.
Oh yeah, no, I invested heavily. Actually, it probably would have been a better investment had I held on to the Dreamcast.
Kept it in the box.
Yeah, my God, I'd probably sell it to some nerd now for like $200,000. Anyhow, it's kind of cool to be able to get over on somebody like a very specific joke, But you can have original material that's also universal. There's a great discussion of this in Patton Oswalt's book, Silver Screen Fiend, worth checking out. Actually, we should do like an Amazon link, and if anybody buys it, we get like a nickel or whatever. Like, set that up. But you should go buy that book and read it. He talks about like how he was coming out of these like very personal shows at Largo in LA and performing in Vegas. And Vegas and cruise ships have a lot in common, just in the idea that you have all these people from all over the world and all over the country, and your comedy sort of has to appeal to all of them. Every section of the country, every age group, all of them have to laugh. And how when, Patton Oswalt didn't do well in his first experience there, his friends said, oh, forget about that. Just keep doing the kind of personal comedy that you do here at Largo in LA. And his response was, no, I want to find a way to take what I'm doing at the hip clubs and make people at Vegas laugh and understand it. So I think the idea that you're performing for all sorts of different people, while it might feel limiting to a comic who, likes to perform for other hipsters in a hipster club, take that as a challenge, right? Can you write a joke that has a sense of universality to it? That everybody in the room, whether they're very young, very old, whether they're from the Midwest, from the coasts, from, an English-speaking country that's not our own, can you make a joke that makes all of them laugh? I had a friend who performed over in England, and he had a bit about the Rocky movies that went over very poorly. And he came back and he was like, he told me about it. And I said, well, haven't they seen them? And he was like, yeah, they're aware of Rocky. It's just the cultural ubiquity of Rocky isn't the same there as it is here. So all of my jokes sort of fell flat because they haven't watched Rocky 4 785 times like the average 40-year-old in America has. So that challenge of writing for everybody, even in a club setting like on the ships that I've done, I think, again, the idea that it's difficult doesn't mean that it can't be done. You can write original buffet jokes, and you should try it. Cruise ships are a lot of fun because of that. Cut any of the stupid things I said. Any follow-up questions about that? I guess I could say it is lonely on a cruise ship, Jim. Right. Yeah, because it's very lonely on a cruise ship because there are, the passengers, of which you are not one. And you realize when you're by yourself on a cruise ship that everything on a cruise ship is built either for couples or for families. And it's just weird to get onto you don't want to be like the single 43-year-old guy in line for the go-karts. It's like, where's your kid? I don't have one. I'm just here by myself to do go-karts. Pay no mind to me. And you also realize that the other entertainers on the boat have been there for 6 months. Like so they've already formed a clique. So performing on a cruise ship in a lot of ways is exactly like high school for me, which is I can't do anything because everybody already has friends and they don't want to be my friend. So it's a lot of just walking around. It's so funny because you'll see the dance troupe hanging out together, and it's just these fabulously symmetrical Italian 20-somethings, and they're all in a circle, and they're just flamboyantly just at the table eating, and they're just attractive people, and I walk by hello, and they just look at me well, hello. I can't do an Italian accent. Hey, it's me, Mario. Keep walking, comedian. I mean, they're not mean. It just feels like I'm always intruding. So it's 2 weeks of being by yourself is difficult. So I would say the performances are actually easy compared to the 23 hours a day where you're trying to kill time on a cruise ship without looking like a weirdo.